Then we're going to meet Al's friends. They're all playing cards at the living room coffee table, and we see they all also have terrible haircuts. So the punchline starts to come into focus here, and that is that by going to salons, even the manliest of men turn gay. So let that be a warning to you super butch guys out there.
You might be gay. You might be gay.
Welcome back to another episode of The Rank. I'm John, and today we're going to be ranking the next episode of Married with Children. And for those of you who are new to the show, I'm just going to give you a brief agenda. First, we start with the potent notables, which are just a couple interesting facts or tidbits that I found out about this episode or series. Then I go into the episode overview, which is where I talk about everything that happened in the episode, so spoiler alert. And then I do the rank, where I rank the episode based on 5 categories on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being the worst, 5 being the best, all to find out what are the best sitcoms of all time. And today, we're going to be ranking the 9th episode of the 3rd season of Married with Children, titled Requiem for a Dead Barber, written by Ron Levitt and Michael G. Moy and directed by James E. Hornbeck. Well, all right, let's get into it. Let's find out how this one stacks up, starting with the potent notables.
Potent notables.
So this episode aired Sunday, February 12th, 1989. It went from a 10.9 to a 12 rating, making it the highest of the night for Fox, and meaning it finally beat Day by Day, its direct competition on NBC. Pretty wild, it just keeps getting bigger and bigger. Now this was news for me, maybe it's not for everybody. Apparently Meghan Markle grew up on the set of Married with Children. For those who don't know, Meghan Markle married Prince Harry, I think, one of the princes in England, and then they renounced their titles, and they made a bunch of documentaries and stuff about it. Anyway, her dad Thomas was the show's DP, or director of photography, and she would often go to set after school. She also acknowledged that it was a bit controversial at times, saying, quote, "There were a lot of times my dad would say, 'Meg, why don't you go and help with the craft services room over there? This is just a little off color for your 11-year-old eyes.'" There you go. Those are the potent notables. Let's go to the episode overview. So we open the episode with the news that Al and Peggy have just come back from a funeral. Whose funeral? Well, as the title of this episode would suggest, it's Al's barber's funeral. And Al is really sad about this. Although it does seem like the sadness comes from a bit of selfishness, because he's like, well, how am I going to get my hair cut now? But he does lament, why couldn't it have been somebody that nobody cares about? Why couldn't it have been your mom? To Peggy. I mean, yikes, Al. But we find out that Al's been going to this barber his whole life. His dad went to that barber, and then he started going to that barber, and then he tried to bring Bud to the same guy. But I guess Tony, who's the barber's name, Tony gave Bud a bowl cut, and Bud did not like it, and he refused to go back. And Al said it broke his heart. He didn't even have the heart to tell him that Bud didn't want to go. He just told him Bud died. But what's interesting here is that Bud seems to have held on to this strong dislike of Tony, because he seems to have this unabiding hatred for poor dead Tony here. It's going to play out through a couple remarks in the episode, one especially where Bud makes comments about having Buck piss on his grave. It's kind of intense, Bud. I get that you didn't like the bowl cut, but damn. But soon after this discussion about Bud being dead and whatnot, Kelly's going to come in the house, and she's going to be wearing this really tight, bright sundress, and she's like, oh, I can finally get out of these funeral clothes. Also, she's decided she wants a hearse for her first car. Okay, Kelly. But the Rhodeses are going to come over next, and they're going to question Al about some missing roses from their yard. It's a very goofy exchange, but it does become quite clear that Al did sneak over there in the middle of the night and steal roses to bring to this funeral. But it eventually just devolves into the Rhodeses and Al making fun of each other. Marcy makes fun of Al's hair. Al makes fun of Marcy's leg hair. It was all very Married with Children. But they're basically giving us the premise and plot of the episode. Al needs to go to a new barber, but this generation, this lazy generation or whatever, has killed off the barber because all they go to are salons. That damn Gen X. Now, but before we get too lost into that story, we're going to get a small B story here. That's going to be introduced with Peggy worrying about Al dying. Because what if he dies while I'm in my 40s? Can't get a new man. Because she had a plan, right? He'll die when she's still young. She'll get a new husband. But if she's in her 40s, then it's all shot to hell, I guess. Are we saying that she's still in her 30s? I guess I could buy it. But what's really fun about this scene is that when Peggy is voicing her concerns about Al dying, Marcy looks over to Steve, and at least it appeared to me, she almost broke. And there were a couple other times in this episode where Ed O'Neill broke, or almost broke. but it sure did seem like they were having fun filming this one. Now, I don't know about you all, but whenever I see that, it always makes it more fun for me. But this discussion about his death is going to bring up life insurance. And Marcy's going to make the point that she's got Steve so well insured that he's worth more dead than alive. And because of this discussion, we get Steve feeling more and more uncomfortable. It was a fun bit all the way around. And Peggy's going to get told that the only thing she needs to get life insurance on Al is his blood and his urine. So now she's cooking up a plan to get it. I mean, the urine would be easy. She could just put a cup about 5 feet away from the toilet bowl and he'd just fill it up. But the blood is going to be trickier. And of course, after this, Marcy and Steve leave with Marcy saying how he's got to go clean out the gutters and I'm holding the ladder for him. Steve's like, I love you, dear. And she's like, that's nice. You know, we got some intimations that she's going to kill her husband. But we're going to cut to the next morning and Al is coming downstairs and he's like, Peg, it's the darndest thing. When I woke up, my neck was bleeding. There was a jar between my legs. But Al is still really concerned about the whole Barber thing. He's even called all his friends about it. To which Peggy jokes, what did he say? Well, they're all going to salons now. And then we get a joke that feels a little Epstein-y in retrospect, because Al's not going to give up on finding a barber. He's going to find a barber. He's going to find a real man, a man who likes girls but hates women. So I don't know if it's just because I'm old now, or how much society has changed since then, or because of all the Epstein stuff. But when he said it, I was like, oh, I don't know about that. Anyway, his search fails, and the next time we see him, it's 2 months later, and his hair is super long, unkempt, disheveled. I mean, it's kind of gross looking, to be honest. But you know, the thing is, for a guy who's going bald, he can sure grow a lot of hair in 2 months. But he's determined to keep barbers in business. He goes on a rant about basically Gen X and talks about how soft it is and how cartoons you used to be able to have a mouse smash a cat's head with a frying pan. And now they just go to therapy. It's so amusing to me that every generation considers the newer generation soft. And it's always because the newer generation is utilizing the conveniences and tools and things that were invented by the previous generation. You built these things to make your own generation soft and then got mad when the next one got soft. Anyway, but Al does eventually give up, though. He's gonna break down and go to a salon. Or as he says, I'm gonna get washed and blown. Which was a good joke, but my favorite part was that Ed O'Neill clearly almost broke when he was saying it. So we head to a new set, and the first thing we get is a whole bunch of stereotypical gay jokes. Then we get a bunch of stuff with Al not fitting in. A woman is gonna come up to him, kind of flirt with him, and ask him if he's rich, and then he says no, and she just says bye and leaves. Then Murphy, a stylist, comes up and asks him how she can help him. And he says, can you dance in a cage? Which made me laugh, but also, what a weird thing to say. So as she's leading him to his seat, Al's just staring at her body and says, that's a nice place you got there. But after he sits down and he's got his back to her, he thinks that she's rubbing his scalp, but they've switched out and it's a guy who's clearly meant to be gay. So we get some more gay jokes. So we head back to the house now. It's nighttime, right? And the kids are like, where's dad? And Peggy's saying he doesn't want to come in the house until everybody's asleep and the lights are out. Basically, he doesn't want anybody to check out his new do. And when he finally does come in, he looks terrible. Just an absolutely awful haircut. And then they all laugh at him. Amazingly, he's gonna ask Peg, do you want to go have sex? And she says no, which, if we're tracking here, I believe that's only the second time so far that she's ever turned him down. Contrary to the feedback he's getting, though, Al seemingly thinks he looks good. Then we're gonna meet Al's friends. They're all playing cards at the living room coffee table, and we see they all also have terrible haircuts. So the punchline starts to come into focus here, and that is that by going to salons, even the manliest of men turn gay. So let that be a warning to you super butch guys out there.
You might be gay. You might be gay.
Now this point is going to be hammered home by one of the friends there, suggesting they go see La Cage aux Folles, which I've seen, by the way, and you probably have too, even if you don't realize it. Because La Cage aux Folles was a play that was adapted into a movie starring Robin Williams and Nathan Lane, which you may know as The Birdcage. Now I've seen the movie and the play, and they're both hilarious. Of course, in this context, it's made clear that that means that this guy is turning gay. So Al's going to pull all the other ones aside and say they need to go out and do something manly so they can wash the gay away. Wow. But after that scene, we're going to get some closure on the B story. It turns out that Peggy was turned down for life insurance on Al because of the high unaliving rate for shoe salesmen. And then the kids are going to end up fighting over the idea that Al is not their father. To be clear, they both want to not be his kid. Bud says, I know Kelly's dad's, but I was a one-night stand with a cool guy, right, Mom? And then Kelly responds, hey, I heard that. I'm not dad's either. This is really messed up. Very funny, but messed up. But after the B story closure, Al comes bursting in the door. We're gonna get closure on the A story now. Before we do though, as Al is bursting in, we see that Ed O'Neill almost breaks again. I love it. But he's thrilled because he's found a barber. It was actually Tony's dad. He found Tony's dad to be his barber, who's 96. And Al is going to extol the virtues of going to a real barber, even though his hand may shake a bit. Then we're treated to a great sight gag as we close the episode, where we see bandages all over Al's head, presumably from the shaky hands of the 96-year-old barber. There's a great joke to end on, but let's find out how it ranked.
Oh, wait.
So the rank is where I rank the episode based on 5 categories: story, acting, dialogue, episode coherence, and character relatability. I rank it on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being the worst, 5 being the best. And then I have a laugh counter where I tally up the amount of times the episode made me laugh. 1 point per laugh out loud gets added to the score. But before I get into the rankings here, I just want to say if you're enjoying this episode, please leave a like down below. It really does help me out. Without further ado though, first category is story. So the story here is that Al's barber dies and he has to go find a new one. I mean, there's really not much to this. I gave it a 2. So that brings us to acting, and the acting was fine. It sure seemed like the cast was having a lot of fun filming this one. I swear I caught them almost breaking on 3 separate occasions. This is one of those episodes though that's so over the top. It's hard to know what bad acting or good acting would look like with this material. I decided to go 3.5. So let's go to dialogue. Now, this was definitely a leaner episode in terms of laughs. They really relied on a lot of homophobia to get them through this one. And I don't mean they were especially mean to gays or anything, but it was also not the most clever dialogue. So I gave it a 2.25. So that brings us to episode coherence. I don't even know how to rate this one. I mean, cohered to what exactly? I suppose character-wise, they all seem to make some sense. So I can't necessarily dock it, but I certainly can't give it a high score. So I went with a 2.75 because that feels in the middle to me. That brings us to our last category, which is character relatability. Can I relate to being upset about losing a barber? I mean, from a human standpoint, yeah, but not from the, oh, I don't have a barber now standpoint. However, I can relate to the idea of losing something that feels like it's part of your way of life. It's why every generation complains about the younger generation. They see their norms slipping away and being realigned to match a younger population. And that's a disconcerting feeling. So I gave it a 3, which is giving it probably more credit than it deserves, but whatever. So that brings us to the laugh counter. And to be honest, we have some low rankings here, so we need a pretty good laugh counter to keep it in the top 3 tiers. And it got me 18 times, so it's a pretty good laugh counter. That puts the episode total at a 31.5, which makes it an I'd watch it again. For the series, the average is now at a 33.5, which keeps the series as an I'd watch it again. And if you're ranking along with me, drop your score in the comments. I'd be really curious to see, especially the laugh counter. But thanks for listening and or watching. Check out my other Married with Children episodes or any of my other sitcom or movie episodes. Remember to subscribe, comment, and like. For full up-to-date rankings, you can check out my website at therankedpodcast.com, where you can also email me at john@therankedpodcast.com. And if you want to support the show, you can become a patron at patreon.com/therankedpodcast. But I will leave you with this. I really tried hard to find a joke at the end here, but just none of them made the cut.
That was clever.
So we head to a new set. It's a Salon set.
Hairball! Major hairball! Ugh!